Don't bite off more than you can chew. Russian leader Vladimir Putin ignored the implications of this promise, and now the Moscow army is stuck in a Ukrainian stalemate from the start of the war to the present day. With the offensive operations carried out by the Kiev army in the first days of the new year, the course of the war began to change gradually. This week, critical clashes, sudden raids, and interesting situations on the battlefield continued unabated. Let's dive right into the hot-breaking points that occur on the front lines on the battlefield. Our first stop is the Makivka settlement in the Donetsk region. You remember, in this area, the Ukrainian army blew up a huge Russian military base and eliminated about 400 Moscow army soldiers. The shocking details that emerged after the attack were quite remarkable. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced that the Ukrainian attack, which killed hundreds of soldiers in the city of Makivka, was caused by the use of mobile phones by Russian soldiers. According to the statements of the Russian ministry, the data obtained from the mobile phone signals of the soldiers of the Moscow army created an opportunity for Ukraine to prepare the attack perfectly. Ukrainian army soldiers captured the strategic coordinates at this base and deployed HIMARS long-range missile systems according to these coordinates. And then, as we predicted, the Russian military base was brought under crossfire by Kiev soldiers and special forces within seconds. This week, right after the Makivka attacks, it was claimed that Russia's Lear-3 electronic warfare system UAVs were flying around Donetsk, collecting the signals of the phones in the region as if they were a mobile phone transmitter, and transmitting this information to the center to determine the location. Was Russia beginning to learn from its record losses? With this step by Russia, an intelligence struggle has also started between both sides of the war. All these interesting details were increasing the temperature on the eastern front of Ukraine. Now we are going to Bakhmut, the region where the most active and fierce fighting took place on the Donetsk front line. At the moment, even the Wagner mercenaries began to be ineffective on the Bakhmut front line, where the Russian troops were having difficulty advancing. With the help of the local Ukrainian people to the Kiev army, the latest situation in Bakhmut is in favor of the Ukrainians. Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin admitted that in this city, his mercenaries have been making no progress in recent days. Even Prigozhin is on the verge of giving up right now. If we take a look at the southern parts of Bakhmut, we can come across Ukrainian fortifications even in the houses of the residents here. Russia has now begun sending its troops from Soledar, in the northern part of the city, to this area to provide support to the fighting in Bakhmut. In Opytne, on the south side of Bakhmut, Ukrainian forces are trying to break through the Russian fortifications and enter Bakhmut from the south. In this region, the atmosphere of excitement and anxiety was growing, and the Ukrainian armed forces made counterattacks against the Moscow troops, who were trying to gather additional support and continued their attacks in Bakhmut. The troops of the Kiev army successfully repelled the last Russian attacks in this region in a striking operation carried out jointly with the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service. In addition, the Kiev soldiers and the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service, who were advancing at a very fast pace in the region, managed to seize dozens of Russian positions with their counterattacks yesterday. During these clashes, Ukrainian defenders killed 9 Russian soldiers and injured about 20 invaders. The troops of the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service and the soldiers of the Kiev army in this area continued to advance deep into the Bakhmut front even after capturing the Russian positions. In a flat and tree-obscured area of the city, under artillery fire, Russian attack aircraft tried to seize one of the forward positions of the Ukrainian defenders. Ukrainian border guards awaited artillery strikes in the bunkers, and when the Russian infantry approached, the Ukrainian defenders opened fire immediately. Seeing that the invaders were leaving in panic, the Ukrainian border guards immediately counterattacked with the troops of the Kiev army in this area. With a rapid offensive operation, the Ukrainian forces occupied the Russian positions, and the Moscow troops in this area, where the fighting was taking place, continued to retreat. As a result, the attempt by the Russian troops to attack in this hot area of Bakhmut was unsuccessful. The soldiers of the Moscow army, who suffered losses, completely left the aforementioned conflict area. Thanks to this striking operation, the Ukrainian defense forces advanced 300 meters in this region and started to secure their new positions. The Ukrainian State Border Guard Service would change the course of the conflicts on the Bakhmut front and ensure the retreat of the Russian troops from their positions. Still continues its active mission in Bakhmut, together with the soldiers of the Kiev army. Russia, which continues to suffer heavy losses, made a striking statement after the fiasco in Bakhmut. President Vladimir Putin has ordered the Russian Defense Ministry to cease fire effective from 6 to 7 January, when Orthodox Christians celebrate Christmas. Russian forces will silence their weapons for 36 hours, starting at 12 o'clock on January 6th. The ceasefire to be implemented on the battlefield by order of Putin will last until midnight on January 7th. Many Orthodox Christians living in Russia and Ukraine celebrate Christmas on January 6 and 7. Putin's ceasefire order follows the call of Patriarch Kirill of Russia, because large numbers of Orthodox citizens live in areas affected by the conflict in Ukraine. It is among the ethical rules required by the war that the Russian administration calls on the Ukrainian side to declare a ceasefire and allow them to attend Mass on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. But given the fact that the Russians have been attacking civilian targets since the beginning of the war, with no regard for humanitarian values, the Ukrainians should not be distracted for a second on the front lines, no matter what. Mikhail Podolyak, an advisor to Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky, rejected Putin's call for a ceasefire and described it as hypocrisy. Podolyak underlined that a temporary ceasefire could only be possible with the withdrawal of Russia from the occupied territories in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government argues that Putin's declaration of ceasefire is pure propaganda. American President Joe Biden, when asked about Putin's declaration of ceasefire, said that the Russian leader was trying to get some oxygen with the 36-hour ceasefire. Mikhail Podolyak had previously argued that the ceasefire was a trap and accused the Russian Orthodox Church of being a war propagandist and inciting the mass murder of Ukrainians and the militarization of Russia. We remember that Vladimir Putin previously used his army for civilian targets to breach the humanitarian corridor during the ceasefire talks. If we look at the Russian leader's New Year's speech, we can get a good idea of what stage Vladimir Putin is at now, what he's thinking, and where he wants to take Russia in 2023. In fact, it was the image of Putin in his speech that expressed everything beyond what he said. Putin gave his speech in front of sullen, uniformed men and women. It was a very striking picture. The Russian leader has now managed to attract attention with his call for a temporary ceasefire. While Putin still doesn't call it war, he is a leader focused on military victory over Ukraine, NATO and the West, and has asked everyone to support that cause. But Vladimir Putin seems ready to do anything in line with these wishes. These are only visual messages, and when you look at what the Russian leader said, he did not extend an olive branch to Ukraine and did not give any concession signals. In addition, Putin did not give a message such as, "Let's find a way out of this quagmire." Putin is a leader fully focused on victory. He pursues such a policy either because he truly believes victory is possible or because he knows how much of a quagmire he is in. There is no turning back, and his only option is to hope something will change in his favor. The Russian leader, who thinks that he offers the idea of giving a Christmas break to the conflicts as a reward to Ukraine, is unclear what will come of this idea. Either serious conflicts will cease for a certain period of time, or Russia will try to attack civilian targets in a striking manner as it did at the beginning of the war. We hope that innocent Ukrainian civilians will not be affected by this land again. Thank you for watching us.